It is definitely around 2 minutes after the top of the hour, and it is the summit o'clock. This is the summit, and we are now in session. Of course, one of the most interactive conversational talk show right here on the land of 1,000 hills, and by far probably the rest of the African continent. My name, as always, is Eugene. And thank you so much for making time. It is the 25th day of the month of October, probably one of the months that have actually flown so fast. Who knew that would be here today? But of course, we are here regardless, and for a very, very important conversation. We are talking food matters, and of course, talking about it and connecting it with what we've been able to see across the different continents in terms of the interconnected world that we live in, especially when it comes to the areas of the global shocks that we've been able to see today, how they're affecting the food systems. That is what we'll be talking about right here on the program. How do you achieve food security in the midst of global shocks? That's the conversation. And as you can see it on our social media platforms, we've been receiving feedback. Of course, I have Ali Stacy, who's on the X platform, who says, timely topic, I can't wait to listen in, and I'm hoping that you're already tuned in. Nsanga Sylvie has been also sharing her thoughts on this, and she said access to adequate food is basic human right, not a favor. Pressing need here, the Rwandan government, and of course digital innovations, women empowerment, and of course women being the majority with no power or control of resources, they have the potential. Great Rwanda is disrupting through its pro-poor and digital policies. We'll be able to delve deeper into that. A very interesting calculation here from Dr. Joseph, who is actually trying to show us here the kind of calculation on a weekly basis, and he actually comes to a total of around 137,600 Rwandan francs on a weekly basis if he's supposed to actually do the shopping right there. We'll be able to delve deeper into how the amounts in terms of the food prices are also affecting us out here, and what the policymakers are working around the clock to do in terms of solving that. We are live, as I said. It's on this particular platform on our YouTube channel. Go onto the comment section, that is the chat section as well. Please share your thoughts, and I'll be able to read them right here in the program. Allow me now to bring our able panelists who are joining us right here on the show. And I want to start off with none other than Andre Bagnoli, who's the UN World Food Program Country Director right here in Rwanda. Let's give him a round of applause from wherever we are at our homes, and we can be able to have him join us on set right here. Also joining us right here on the show is none other than Dagmawi Habte Selassie, who's actually the IFAD representative and country director for Burundi and Rwanda. I'm sure back at home we are giving him a round of applause as he also comes to share with us his thoughts from the IFAD perspective. Also joining us right here on the show is Kumba So, who's the FAO representative here in Rwanda, and of course her portfolio was actually increased, and she now covers also Djibouti. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Kumba as she joins us right here on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Minister of State for Agriculture and Animal Resources, Eric Rwigamba. Of course, he makes a debut on the summit right here, of course, having gotten this portfolio just the other day. Welcome so much. Let's give him a round of applause, yeah? The summit is now in session, and I want us to be able to get on with this. Thank you so much for making time and for being a part of the show. And Kumba, I must say, I did say it earlier, thank you for making it officially a panel and not a manel.
Thank you for inviting.
Of course, thank you very much. I want to start off first of all with the Honorable Minister. Of course, there's been a lot of activities. Even today, there's been a lot of that going on out here. And we are still also continuing as a country to celebrate the World Food Day. I know it is marked on the 16th of October, but here in Rwanda we'll definitely be able to look at that on the 27th. But even as we do this or plan for this, there are those who are back at home, like we've even seen the previous tweet earlier on of Joseph, who's actually doing the calculations of what it ends up being like in terms of a weekly basis in terms of shopping today. They might be asking, is there anything to celebrate, especially with the high cost of food today? Honorable Minister, is there anything to celebrate this year?
Thank you so much, Anangwe. Thank you so much, RBA, to be here once again. Anything to celebrate? Yes, because I'm pretty sure that someone got something to eat today. Mm-hmm. And because of that, then we need to celebrate it. Mm-hmm. But that is only possible because so many farmers spend all their time and lives in the gardens to prepare food for us. So we need to celebrate that because we still have farmers that are still very positive about this noble cause of agriculture. Yes.
So there's room and there's a lot to celebrate from your perspective. Kumba, from the FAO perspective, you know, there was what we call the FAO Food Price Index that actually came out from one of the reports, and it actually pointed to an increase which is seen to be steady since the mid-2020. And this has surged by 12.6% from February to March 2022. Again, the same question asked the Honorable Minister. There are some people who say it's a celebratory day, but their pockets are not celebrating.
It's important. First, thank you for inviting us and for giving this opportunity. 16 October is important because it's the date 44 countries decided that we need to invent an organization that will look like FAO. It was at the middle of the World War II. The constitution of the organization, when it was established, was saying that there are a few things that we have to make sure that we achieve. 78 years later, we were in the middle of World War II. We still have a lot of conflicts that are ongoing. We had COVID-19, we have climate change. We have a number of challenges that we have to fix. High food prices is one of them. But high food prices is a consequence of a lot of things that are happening outside of our territories sometimes. It includes climate change, it includes others. But why we need to celebrate? I'm very happy what Honorable Minister said. If we are here today, it's most probably because we had a lunch today and farmers are still producing. And what we have seen in the past also give us some hope that we should continue celebrating. At the era of the MDGs, by 2015, there are a number of countries that we considered have halved the number of people who were hungry in the world or in their own countries. What does it mean? It means that solutions are there and we can still use them to reduce prices.
Right. So at least with these milestones, there's reason to actually smile and celebrate. From an IFAD perspective, I want to understand, you know, what are the components that we could be able to look back and say, look, there's a reason to smile, there's a reason to say, amidst all the crises that we're seeing, we can still celebrate.
Yeah, I think, as Kumba mentioned, if we look back at the progress that many of our countries have made over the years in ensuring people have nutritious food, not just having food to eat, but nutritious food. And we've seen the development that we had across, especially our continent, in terms of that. But going back maybe to the comment that we had earlier from our colleague that was doing the cost, and I think as we celebrate, it's also a moment a call of action for us to say, how can we ensure, looking at all these shocks, we had World War II before, but now with all these different shocks that we have now, how do we ensure we can keep celebrating a day where we're eating? So it's a celebration, but also a call for action for us to see how we can improve and do better as we move forward.
Right. I'll come back for another round of that, but let me hear from Andrea. A lot of people, yes, we've heard that we can celebrate because we had a meal, but we know that there are parts of the world where people are still struggling. And I want to understand from a perspective of the WFP, you know, what are the milestones that you feel, even during this year's celebration of World Food Day, we can be able to point out and stand, you know, tall and say we've actually made milestones?
I think that is a day that remember all of us, as we were saying, the achievement. We celebrate all those people that every day go to work the land to produce food. We celebrate every family that every day has the possibility to sit around the table. We celebrate all the children that every day go to school and they have a hot meal. We celebrate all the pregnant lactating women, and we celebrate the children that receive nutritious food that can fight stunting. We celebrate, also celebrating, we remember all those people that because of conflict, because of shocks, because of drought, because of emergency, they are not able to sit at the table or to have enough food for their needs every day. So it's a moment to celebrate, a moment to remember, a day that help us, remember us that probably we need to share, because there are countries that they have more, a country that they have much less. World, unfortunately, is not equal.
I want to come back to the Honorable Minister, and I want us just to be able to shift the conversation a bit and try to look for solutions to the way of how we can achieve, you know, food security amidst all the global shocks that we continue to see. Ukraine-Russia war happened, COVID-19 happened. Just the other day, we are now seeing the Israel and of course, the Palestine war coming on board. A lot of this will continue to affect the food security from where we sit. I want to understand from a Rwanda context, a Rwanda perspective, from a policy formulation perspective, at what point or what can we be able to see or hear that at a policy level you're already working on ways of ensuring that the country can remain stable in terms of its food security, even when we continue to have these shocks that we see today?
Yeah, right. I think as a country and the government is aware of the importance of agriculture as a sector, as a pillar for the economy. Just to remind people, it contributes almost 25% to the GDP. Yeah. It employs close to almost 80% of our people. Whatever we're trying to do in terms of industries and factories, 70%. So these are numbers that we still believe that they're very significant for the country and for the economy. And because of that, the government is putting in place different programs. And the programs are all aimed at increasing production, but most importantly, productivity. So we have been able to do different assessment and see where are we today, and we know for all value chains, for maize, rice, Irish potato, where are we today in terms of how much we are producing, how much do we need to produce, and who's producing what. So if I can go into that, we have looked at different programs. The government is supporting and subsidizing fertilizers, and we've been importing them. This November, we are launching a plant that will be able to produce, to blend all the fertilizer that we need. We think that will help on two fronts. One, in terms of cost, but most importantly, to align the type of the soil we have from different areas with the right fertilizer that are relevant for that particular soil. The next thing also is look at the improved seeds. So we must take note of the fact that the government has made all possible arrangements and programs, working with the private sector especially, and the development partners. And today, we almost, we are self-reliant in terms of most of the improved seeds, maize. We still have a bit of work to do in terms of Irish potato and beans and vegetables. Beans not so much a problem, but mainly vegetables and the Irish potato. So when you have the soil and the land, and you take care of the health of the soil, I'll come back to that. Health of the soil could determine the plant grows within that soil. So we are so much as the government concerned about how do we maintain and preserve the health of the soil. You apply the right seeds, the right fertilizers. The next thing that we are working on is extension services. How do we ensure that we have the right agronomist and the vet to the right place and the right time? And then you go on to say, if you have been able to do that, are farmers equipped with the right support in terms of knowledge and capabilities? Then post-harvesting, you've seen different reports. Post-harvesting losses are quite high. They vary from value chain to value chain, but they are not, the numbers are worrying. In some value chains, it goes up to about 60%. So the government is putting up different programs to ensure that there is a lot of support to help in addressing the problem of post-harvest losses. Then the market. So, markets are catered for vegetables. We are putting up a very big initiative here in Kigali, where we're able to aggregate and be able to collect all the vegetables, set standards, pack them very well, and for other markets. You go for maize. So it's quite a list of initiatives, but I think I need to mention two that are very important. We have been doing analysis. We know the issue of productivity is more serious for small-scale farmers. I'll give an example. For maize, small-scale farmers produce about about 1.5 metric ton per hectare. For large-scale farmers, they're in the range of about 5. But we have farmers in Rwanda, and I'm talking about average, but we have individual farmers that have produced 10, 12, 7 metric tons per hectare. So meaning that within the same piece of land that we have today, we are able to feed this country and export for all various commodities apart from rice. The rest, we just need to do the right thing, try to consolidate land, identify large-scale farms, and then apply all the efforts to those particular sites. We call them food basket sites, increase productivity. Within a period of probably not even more than 2 years, we should be able to start being a net exporter of food. But that requires those efforts.
It requires those efforts. I'm going to come to the development partners and see where probably they can be able to chip in. But Honorable Minister, when you say that, it paints a very rosy and beautiful picture. But for the viewer who's probably watching us tonight, and they went to the shop to buy Irish potatoes, beans, maize, flour, they are seeing an increase in the cost of this. While you say that there's actually more production, to a point that we can even be able to export all that, how do we explain that scenario to them, for them to really understand what you're saying, that is actually creating a better picture in terms of the state of affairs? Yeah,
so I think, first of all, I got the same markets with them, so I know prices are going up. And as I said, there are 3 issues that we need to address right now. One is production, increased production. 2 is productivity. But there's another point that's very, very important. The issue of aggregation. How do we ensure that whatever is produced is actually properly managed to feed our people? And because we have done it proper, in that case, we should have been able to estimate how much is going to be the deficit. Then you are able to source it, to import it at the right time, at the excuse me, at the right price. Excuse me. So when we do that, we feel so. Production is driven by, do we have land? So we have identified what we call food basket sites. And these areas we are going to apply all the efforts and increase production and productivity. We have mapped them across the country, all districts, so we know how much land. So I want to believe that we have enough land. Let me repeat it. We have enough land to produce more than what this country needs, provided we apply the right farming practices, seeds, fertilizers, timing, extension services, and increase, at least reach the minimum, like the average word productivity. If we do that, I want to promise that we are able to produce enough food, provided whatever we produce, we manage it properly.
Right, interesting. And Kumba, I see you listening very keenly on this, and I want to understand how FAO can plug in, or has been plugging in, to these efforts by Rwanda, and when someone who's feeling the pinch in their pocket, when they can be able to expect, the fruit or the fruits of that collaboration with the Rwandan government in ensuring what the Honorable Minister says comes to reality.
I think looking ahead, we are planning together with the ministry, and Honorable Minister have mentioned it. There is some analysis that are done on planning through the PSTA 5, which will be the guiding document of the agriculture sector for the next 5 years. And that PSTA 5 is looking at very critically each piece of land of the country and what it can produce. Might it be for commercial farming, might it be for small-scale farming. Because it's not that you can produce everything you want on any land. Somebody might ask why Rwanda is focusing on exporting crops, for instance, because sometimes the agroecological zone you have to deal with allows you only to produce tea. So you will go for it. You will go for it because you will bring revenue to the country, but also you will bring employment to youth particularly, to women. They can become outgrowers, but they can also get an income by working in a factory for tea, for instance. But at the same time, you have the dual approach whereby you also look at what are those activities that can bring very easily income, lift people out of poverty, bring more food security and nutrition. And there are various activities and initiatives that the government has also identified. Small stock is one of them, poultry, piggery, and we can think of all type of crops that will bring up the level of nutrition. How FAO can support this process? First, by being engaged from the very beginning, and we thank the government of Rwanda for having invited all stakeholders to be part of the process. We are not talking of agriculture, we are talking of agri-food systems. The moment you talk of food systems, you are talking of sectors that usually, when you talk of agriculture, you don't bring them in. I will talk of health, for instance. You can't talk of food systems without talking of health, food safety. The health bill that you can get by not having food that is safe is very high. And we are very happy to see that the government has brought us all together, actors in these food systems, to think together with them and to plan together with them, including the investments that have to come once the strategy is done. FAO, we call us very often as a knowledge organization. We are a technical organization. We are what we call the Rome-based agencies. We all have the mandate of supporting countries to achieve the SDG 2, which is zero hunger. However, we have specific issues that we are asked within the UN system to work on. And as a technical organization, we are supposed to support the government with knowledge. Knowledge in getting the best improved seeds, for instance. We are very happy today that we spent the day together with the National Seed Association of Rwanda, which is launching a roadmap together with the Ministry of Agriculture to make sure that the best seed ever are available to smallholder farmers at the cheapest cost possible. Of course, we are facing today a global challenge which is affecting all countries the same. Right? When we talk of high food prices, we are not talking of high prices in general. We are not talking of high prices in Rwanda. We are talking of high prices in the world due to all the constraints that we face because of war, because of the pandemic, and so on and so forth. We bring also, I mentioned food safety, and I will want to stop a little bit there because without food that is safe and nutritious, we can't tackle the major issues that we face in terms of food security, nutrition, stunting, and so on. But it's very difficult also to trade because if the food is not safe, it can't cross a border. Honorable Minister mentioned the fact that we want to be self-sufficient, but we want also to export. And there we support a lot the government with what we call the Codex Alimentarius, which is a WHO FAO platform that helps actually countries to get the safest food possible, but also phytosanitary products that have to cross borders and so on. We support capacity building. For us, this is very important when we speak of getting knowledge to farmers, bringing the most suitable innovation. It requires a lot of capacity building for farmers to adopt it and be able to produce more with less. And the last point on which I will want to finish is investments. Of course, IFAD will talk about it, but as FAO, we bring the knowledge for investments. We have what we call the FAO Investment Center that accompany the government to not only design strategy and so on, but also bankable projects that can go to IFIs and so on. So these are lines through which an organization like FAO within the UN system works to support the government.
Right, interesting. But I want to understand, for that viewer who's watching us and they feel, if we're telling them about Ukraine, Russia, telling them about Israel and the Palestine war, they feel this is too far for me even to understand. Me, I want to see affordable prices of food. I want it now, and I want it because I see our governments and they have very serious and strong partners. How do we explain to them this? When can we be able to be at a point where we are saying the wars and the shocks, which will not end? Pandemics will come and others will come, God forbid. But how do we explain to these people that we are able to prepare ourselves for the next crisis and still be able to remain food secure? Maybe if you can be able to tell us what you think.
Oh, thank you. And that's a very important question, and it's something a lot of people are struggling with to understand how it all relates. And we live in a global economy, right? And we understand that, for example, we talked about the Ukraine and Russia war, right? And Ukraine and Russia being the major exporters of fertilizer, of maize, throughout the world. And we've seen, I think, throughout the world increases in fuel. And fuel is a basis for a lot of the production costs. And I think we talked about our prices at when we go to the groceries to get our produce, but farmers now, the prices, they've increased. So us, very comfortable compared to a smallholder farmer, let's say, in a rural area who's living on $3 a day, have seen his production costs go up 50–60% as well.
Correct.
This is what's driving all these systems up. So for us, especially at IFAD, what we try to do is build resilience throughout the sector. I think one thing that we've seen with COVID and all these, it's important to build local markets and prepare for regional integration. And that's why we're very happy, as Honorable Minister talked about, of seeing, on the continent, or at least in the country, having facilities to be able to reduce those costs of production for smallholder farmers and farmers in general. Our job is to make it more efficient as well, so the practices. So as productivity goes up, as more money you're making for a hectare of land, the more you're able to withstand those shocks, because you have a financial capacity, or in other words. And that will help at least, manage food prices in the country. So we have a multitude of investments that we do with the government of Uganda, or Rwanda, excuse me, I'm talking about my previous life now, but in the dairy sector and in irrigation, so ensuring that water is available. And I think that's a very good theme linked to the World Food Day, which theme this year is linked to water. And ensuring efficient use of those resources as well, so that we're able to really cope with some of these external shocks that we see in the sector.
Andrea, I want to hear your thoughts from a WFP perspective. How do you come in on this? And what's your core plan in terms of ensuring that even as these shocks happen, we're able to still cushion the farmers and people?
I must say, in the global analysis, unfortunately, we move from multilateralism and supporting all countries together to bilateralism. It is the reason why the world is divided into two again: new world, new division, and consequently increasing of the prices, business of the food. This is impact all country. It's a trend that is go everywhere. WFP, because of the inflation, it was overall 39% higher. So you can imagine if the food that we are distributing to population that are in emergency increased by 39%, while also the funding to support those more in need are reducing, you have 39% less funding available to support people that are younger. This is in general. But I think that you were mentioning a pandemic, the major shocks. Each shock should be a lesson learned. So not just mitigate the shocks. There is a flood, we are going to provide support after the floods. We need to build the resilience in advance. So this is important, that this is the reason why also WFP is working here a lot with Ministry of Agriculture, but also Ministry of Social Protection and Ministry of Emergency Response. Because it's important to provide the community the right resilience and building. For example, there has been the floods in May. It was essential to understand what are the communities that may be more targeted, more vulnerable to floods, and then already prepare to save the harvest of this community. At the same time, to prepare how to respond in case the floods happen, and be coordinated, because it's not an effort of one ministry or one organization. It's a joint effort that is made by all together, in order to secure that those that are already vulnerable don't go back even in much poverty, and at the same time to save the saving of those that are just out of the poverty. Because if you have a little money and you plan with this little needed money to buy seeds, fertilizer for the next campaign, and the flood destroy everything, then you go back to poverty. So this is the reason why it's important that the social protection system arrive timely. They provide the support immediately after the floods. The last thing is to build on the lesson and to continue to build resilience on community. For example, we do, I was in Kayonza yesterday, where we had a project that I was learning that we do terrace, conservation agriculture, irrigation system that is respectful on the environment. All these little things bring resilience to the community, improve production, and make us aware and better prepared for the next shocks.
Right, interesting. And I want to come to the Minister, especially on the issue of building resilience and preparing for the next shocks, pandemics, crisis, and stopping to be reactionary, you know. And I want to understand from where you sit, Honorable Minister, you know, what lessons have we learned, you know, from the COVID pandemic, now the Russia-Ukraine war, if we're receiving or feeling this pinch now, and we'll be telling people, look, it's a global problem. How do we prepare them for if we are hit with another one? Look, guys, it's a global problem, but they would not be able to understand that. How are we preparing for the next crisis or the next shocks, Honorable Minister?
Right. I think the best way of dealing with these situations, especially that you don't have much control over, is to prepare ahead of the time. And the government of Rwanda, working with the development partners, have put in place programs that at the end of the day, as I said, is to ensure we have food production. If you have enough food, we shall feel the pinch, but you'll have food on the table. So I will spell out probably about some of the programs. The government has spent a lot of money to, and in some instances working with the development partners and friends of Rwanda, to increase the areas of land that are irrigated. And I'll pick example of a place called Gabiro Agribusiness Hub. It is a project of 15,600 hectares of land. We worked with different people and been able to put in place an irrigation system that is automated, should be functioning very soon by end of this year. And because of that, we have received, so it is 15,000 square meter. We have received people, private sector players, coming from Rwanda and outside Rwanda, wanting to come with their money to invest and increase food production. The land they have asked for is 4 times the land that we have. Meaning that if we de-risk some of these areas, investment and the production of food is not a problem. So someone comes and says, so what, I want 2,000 hectares. And he has imported tractors and he has mechanized the whole place. So that is one place that we think, and we have different sites where we have done that. So after we have learned that when we de-risk some of these activities, different private sector players are going to come running, and they will produce the food for the country and be able to ensure that by the time the crisis occurs, we have enough food in place. Secondly, so that's one example. We have another one in Gako. But so we have so many of that programs that are looking at how do we increase, how do you de-risk the sector? So that we increase production. And that goes also, I talked about the fertilizer company. I talked about private sector who are multiplying seeds. All those helps us to give us resistant breeds of livestock, but also of crops. So the second component is very important. We are also working, finalizing a program of ensuring that we have a national food aggregator. It's one thing to produce, but if you produce and it is not properly managed, by the time the bad season and bad crisis comes, then you are going to start running to the neighbor to look for food. So we believe if we increase if we keep on investing and investing, and I think for me the good news is this: when you de-risk, you don't need to get your money to invest into the activity itself. We have seen that, and so that's the approach the government is trying to do. How do we fast-track public-private initiatives? I will touch on an example. The last example I want to give. We have worked with the World Bank and be able to acquire a 300 fund. And then we designed a program to de-risk and commercializing agriculture.
Yeah.
So we are talking about to map out the large-scale pieces of land, commercialize, mechanize them, irrigate them, and produce food for the people.
Yeah.
And then with this kind of Friends of Rwanda, these institutions, they come and help to do model farms. Because one thing to teach a farmer how to look after the soil or the plant, but the best way is to get actually that farm close to the village where that farmer is and show him how to look after your soil. And so we think the more we try to risk this sector, the more we are able to be ready for some of these crises.
Interesting. And of course, one of those things that we are trying to see or hope to see is the less or the reduction of the reliance of the international countries to be able to sort out some of the needs of the continent, because we're looking at overall more than 30 net importers of wheat have been dependent on both countries, that is Ukraine and Russia, for over 30% of their wheat import needs. And this, I've been in panels where senior African leaders have said it's been a shame for the continent that two countries which are smaller than the surface area of the whole African continent having a challenge and affecting the entire continent. Kumba, I want to understand, how are you supporting countries like Rwanda and now your next portfolio, which is still within the African continent, to be the next breadbasket for the continent, that even if there's a crisis, it will not affect the continent in the magnitude of what we've seen between the situation between Russia and Ukraine?
I'm very happy Honorable Minister touched on fertilizers and seeds particularly, because those are where actually the issue lies when we talk of these global challenges that we are facing, and particularly the war in Ukraine. But you see, when I got in Rwanda, the war in Ukraine was starting to hit countries. I was surprised, a very good surprise, see the government of Rwanda taking immediate action to immediately almost double the budget for fertilizers for that year, adopted by the parliament. I think that first signal is very important in responding immediately to the need of your farmers and population. But second, we are not stopping just at finding a solution immediately, but let's look at the medium and long term. What can we do to make sure that if this type of crisis happens, this is really building resilience of a food system. Let's put in place an industry that will allow us to produce fertilizers, but let's also equip our farmers with tools that allows themselves actually to develop the biofertilizers, for instance. And we have seen the government taking this approach, which an organization like FAO would of course support and make sure that they bring all the knowledge that they have in this endeavor. Another thing that for us is very important when we talk of, and particularly talking of water, which is the theme of this World Food Day. We are facing two issues when we talk of water. We are talking of droughts that might affect the country. I remember December 2022, there was some drought touching some south and eastern part of the country. And there also, immediately a response was put in place to provide farmers with small equipment, which will help them to bridge actually the season and make sure that they don't lose their harvest. But at the same time, we are looking at how to anticipate. What anticipatory actions can we put in place to make sure that farmers, if ever a drought occurs, they can respond. And there comes what Honorable Minister was just saying. improve seeds, for instance. Because if you have a seed that have a short cycle, therefore you can make sure that you can have all the water you need before you get to harvest. These are the type of activities that FAO does support here in Rwanda. You mentioned about Djibouti. Djibouti is a completely different case, but it's always good to bring a perspective.
Yes.
Because we are talking of a country that is extremely dry, where water scarcity is beyond what we can imagine, which is the case of most of the part of Eastern Africa. And you know, when we talk of water scarcity, we talk of climate change, we talk of conflicts, we talk of food insecurity. We believe that most of the conflicts that we see, for instance, in Africa, they come from the scarcity of natural resources and water.
Yes.
And when you don't have food security because you lack of one of the means of production, you don't have peace. And if you don't have peace, you also don't have food security. But Djibouti is also putting in place quite interesting projects that are more to anticipate also the shock of drought, because they're getting water is very difficult, rainwater. We think of more desalinization. The government has put in place a program funded by the European Investment Bank in that regard, working with private sector.
Right, interesting. And I want to hear from IFAD, especially on the aspect of not relying on rain-fed agriculture, because that's the other thing that we've seen countries have relied heavily on the weather. And if it doesn't rain, if we have a bad cycle of the rains, we are actually in for a crisis. I want to hear your perspective of how you're supporting or what you can come in this particular aspect. But of course, also let's move the conversation to the aspect of the young entrepreneurs within the agribusiness space, or trying to support within the food security space. How are you, working in this area in support?
Thank you for that question. I think for IFAD, maybe a step back. IFAD we're an assembler of financing, so we're able to go to the markets or through our contribution from our IFAD is a bit like a cooperative, so every member of IFAD contributes into IFAD, and we're able to use that financing to get other different type of co-financing, including going to the market or different partners, and we support governments along their agricultural sector development and financial inclusion plan. Our backbone are smallholder farmers. This is who we support, and we want to make sure they're efficient. I think touching back on a lot of the aspects we talked about, efficient use of inputs and linking, we're looking at more of a holistic approach now. So looking at the food systems in general, not just agricultural production, so markets and everything else. And I think IFAD over the past few years, we've been tweaking our models a bit to really respond to the ever-changing world that we have now. We're able, for example, during the shocks, we're able to quickly come up with facilities where we had support to help governments cope with some of the shocks. So, for example, in Rwanda during the COVID crisis, we quickly came up with a COVID response facility that was able to really support about 45,000 farmers to have access to fertilizers and inputs to enable them at least to sustain what they had there when all the borders were closed. And also we supported the government strategic food reserve as well, increasing their capacity. So we're building capacity, long-lasting capacity to absorb those shocks. But one thing we're doing a lot more now is investing. We have a new facility for private sector investments. So we understand that development, especially in the agricultural sector, cannot just be done at smallholder level. And to make it sustainable, you need a whole ecosystem of actors that play there. And we've seen throughout the world where we've seen development happen, SMEs and small companies were able to grow. They were the key factor to enable this growth. So we have now a few private sector facilities where we're supporting young entrepreneurs, young agribusiness men and women to really improve their capacity, technical assistance to help them understand what the business plans they have and help them be more efficient and allow to reach more markets. One thing we've done in Rwanda, I think, there's a post-harvest program that we had that ended a few years ago, where we funded close to 200 business plans of young women and men and cooperatives, and helping them access financing to be able to build storage areas or processing areas for their foods. And touching back to what the Honorable Minister said earlier, food loss is a major issue. And this project was able really to reduce, in those areas where we're supported, reduce the food losses. I think For potatoes, it went from 30 to 10% in terms of food losses on the potato value chains. Same with maize and others, where we had 30 to 40% reduction in food losses. So I think this is the way IFAD is working, and right now we're actually IFAD. We have IFAD 13, so it's a 13 allocation to the fund, and we have a very ambitious goal to reach 2 billion of financing for IFAD to be able to have programs of loans and grants to governments around the world for 10 billion. So there will be a
$10 billion.
$10 billion for investment, because we see, as you know, agriculture is a viable business. We're seeing a lot of different investors interested in the sector, but it's still very underfunded in terms of private development banks, where energy and other sectors have taken a lion's share of those. So we're seeing a bigger interest in the sector, and we have a very ambitious goal this year to be able to get to that and help our partner governments be able to move towards the sustainable change that we want to see in the sector.
Interesting. I know I'll come to the minister to tell us how, or whisper to me how we're going to take that 10 billion and where we can take it. But before that, Andre, I want to ask you a very difficult question, but maybe not so difficult. We've talked over the almost 1 hour now of the good things that we are all doing from where we are seated. What's the missing link? What is it that you feel we are not doing that we need to now accelerate the pace in this conversation of building resilience?
To improve food security and resilience?
Yes.
Now, first of all, I would like to say that food security is not just equal self-sufficiency. It's not that the country should be self-sufficient on food. There are countries, like Kumba was saying, that are in the middle of the desert that are food secure. It's a question to have the right market and the affordability for the old people to purchase the food. Then the food can come from everywhere. Okay, Rwanda, I must say, is already a good example where people are for 80% employed in agriculture. The distribution of the land is pretty well done. What is missing probably is, for what I've seen, I'm new in the country, but it's very well organized. And I have to say that both at the high level, but also the farmer level, everybody, so we work at the systemic, but we work also with the people to improve the situation, the food security. What is missing is probably to make sure that we not overuse the land, because the land must be respected. This is the reason why it's not just a question of self-sufficiency. We needed to make sure that also those farmers that is going to produce a bit more are capable to storage and to storage well what they are producing. And we needed to make sure that these farmers that are maybe in the remote area behind the hill have the access to the market, have the possibility and the buyer to bring their food to the market of the country or outside the country, at least to having the right quality. It's also important to consider that maybe also it's not just a question. Rwanda are a lot of smallholder farmers. These smallholder farmers need to be organized in cooperative, it already exists. And then we need to make sure that the quality of the food can be utilized to do better products. For example, WFP here, it doesn't import much food. It's providing cash to the beneficiary most of the time, because we know that the market are quite a lot of availability of food. We also purchase from Rwanda, not only for Rwanda country program, but for the whole region, actually up to Spain, 45 flour for children that are stunted and for pregnant breastfeeding women. This is produced in Rwanda. So WFP, for example, inject about $50 million every year just for regional purchasing for this. What is the problem? That the quality of the food that the smallholder farmer produce, the maize, does not only meet the requirement to go with a big factory and to start the production of higher quality food. So what is missing is to make sure that the farmers are well connected and they have all the infrastructure that is needed to have a high quality food that can be sell in the country or outside the country, because it meets all the requirement and the requirement that the standard that are required. So
interesting, well articulated, Honourable Minister. What's the missing link? Especially, what do you want to see more from the three seated here next to you, for us to be able to achieve this resilience that you're talking about?
I think where we are, we are in a position that is a bit interesting. One, the food prices are a bit high, and so we have kind of pressure in terms of the programs we are putting in place. So like they're saying, you are too slow, you are too late because of the pressure. But I think we are concerned about that, especially some of the issues are coming from outside. But I think, to your point, what do we need to do? I'll give you an example, very practical example. The country needs about 800,000 metric tons of maize to feed the people, the animals, the agro processing and everything. That's the maximum, when everything. Today, we are plowing about 260,000 hectares of land for agriculture, for maize. But we are only getting about 447 metric thousand metric tons. So basically almost half.
Yeah.
And so we have been asking ourselves, what should we do? To my point I was making earlier, the reason of that low quantity is because the average level of output is about, as I said, about 1.5 metric ton per hectare. Yeah. That tells me that if I applied, but then next to my neighbor in Rwanda, we have farmers who have visited, who have engaged, they just used the right quantity of fertilizers. They applied the right seeds. The same soil in Rwanda produced 12 metric tons of maize per hectare. That has confirmed to us that if we are able to make some of these activities commercial, apply all the necessary ingredient, we just need only, for argument's case, those who will have numbers, we just need only 200,000 hectares, less than what we use today, to produce 1 million metric tons of maize.
So what's the missing link, Honorable Minister?
The missing link is to say, how do you get a level of productivity? So we have gone back to numbers to say, look, how much fertilizer do we need? Today I will tell you that we need, on average, we use 61 kilogram of fertilizer per hectare. To get the numbers I'm talking about, you need about 300,000 kilogram. So the moment you make it a business, you're able, the revenue, the income is able to sustain those level of investment and be able to get the production we need. So we know the formula now. And that's why I'm talking about the money that IFAD is talking about, is to just make sure that we get these sites, put in place these ingredients as an investment, get the production, and the Rwandese will be well fed.
And will be good to go. I want to read real quick some of the feedback, and I hope I'm still on the frame. But as I also take your commitments as we go, because time is also not on our side. What are we committing? Of course, coming to you, Kumba, what is your commitment moving forward? To the viewers been watching you, and they've been saying, our hope lies in the partnership that we see with FAO and government of Rwanda, but we're still feeling the pinch. What is your commitment to these people watching you tonight? Just real short, real quick.
The commitment is to continue the same partnership that we have with the government. You were asking about the missing link. And when we came, we just looked at what was the frame that is currently being used by the government. And we were so happy to see the shift from agriculture to agri-food system. For us, that was one of the big missing link. Honorable Minister mentioned private sector, and my colleague here mentioned investment. So I think those missing links are very clear now, and those are the directions where FAO will definitely be supporting the government. That's our commitment.
What about you, IFAD? What's your commitment?
Well, IFAD is committed to continue investing in the sector with government. I think we have the possibility to scale up, good ideas and performing ideas. And maybe an example I'll give is the dairy sector, if you allow me for 2 seconds. I think we're in the midst of launching a new dairy development program, and where we had very good lessons from the first phase, where we've seen dairy, milk, as you know, is very important here, and there's huge investments going in from government to improve the market availability. So our role as IFAD is, how do we ensure that we de-risk the sector enough, going back to de-risking? And we have to be innovative. We can do things as they are. So we're bringing digital tools, bringing private sector, so banks. How do we incentivize banks to come in? Because government cannot keep footing the bill of investing in agriculture. It's a viable business, as the Honorable Minister said, and it's just important to know where are the investments that are going to de-risk this and enable efficient private sector players to come in and take us forward.
Plus, of course, your commitment is the $10 billion,
worldwide.
What's your commitment?
No, my commitment to continue working together, supporting each other with our added value, as a Rome-based agency UN, as a one UN system, and fully following, of course, the strategy of the government and the ministry with who we are working with. And the other commitment is really, as Kumba was mentioning, agro-food system, to have a caring from when the seed is put on the land, the sprout of the seeds, until is harvested and it go to the table of the people. So the whole food system. And I would like to say, maybe it's going to the table of the children at school, that is an investment that in a country that is very young like Rwanda is an investment for the future of the country and for the prosperity of the country.
Wonderful. I had to choose the minister to end so that they don't rush me to go off air. Honorable Minister, they will not cut us off air. We are safe. What's your commitment as the government?
Now, I think as a government, we are going to continue doing probably a number of things. One, coordination. Coordination in terms of let's focus all our efforts. From the government, we need to continue playing our role. Kumba touched about increased investment in fertilizer. In 2022, the increase in terms of government subsidy towards fertilizer, it was 93%. We, as means increase, want to increase to do that. But what we want to do, but all the partners, private sector and the government, let's focus on value chains. So that someone is supported from the farm to the market. The second thing that we don't have to be shy about, so I focused more on large, small commercial farmers. But let me remind our viewer that there is a role to play by smallholder farmers. I strongly believe that almost all our people are able to have some chicken in the garden, in the compound, some vegetables, some fruits, some rabbits, some goat, even a school-going 15-year boy or girl.
We can start doing it from within the spaces we have.
So a home is balanced with the different sources of proteins, vitamins, and nutrients. So all that put together, plus the large-scale production with the small one, we should be able to be a very healthy and strong community.
They are threatening me, Honorable Minister. Let me come closer to you. They're saying, Anango, we need to go. All right, but of course, we'll definitely end it at that particular point. Thank you so much for making time. Of course, we will have this conversation continue on. We'll definitely be able to also have others within the value chain to also hear their voices and their thoughts on these particular issues. As always, we want to say thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next time, same place here on the summit. My name, as always, is Eugene. And Nangwe. Let me say thank you to our panelists. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you so much.
All right, we'll see you. Bye-bye. Thank you.